You know, after spending an entire week watching every single Marvel film in preparation for Avengers Infinity War, it feels like the sane, rational, healthy thing for me to do right now would be to take a break from everything Avengers related. So instead, I'm going to have 2 comic classes come out today talking about the Avengers. Hello everyone, it's me, Aaron, Professor Thor, your guide to all things geeky, and welcome to another episode of Comic Class, the show every single week on this channel where we just geek out about comic books. I get faster and faster at that every single week. Eventually, that's just going to be one high-pitched, quick beep, and that'll be it. That'll be the entire introduction. But yes, as I said, today on Comic Class, we're going to have 2 episodes talking about the Avengers. And for this first episode, I'm going to be talking about No Surrender, the massive 16-part long storyline that just wrapped up last week. Now, before I get into No Surrender, let me give you a little bit of a backstory on what's been going on with the Avengers at Marvel for the past several years at this point, because I think that a lot of people out there who don't follow the Avengers or even Marvel Comics that closely, you might think of the Avengers and go, oh yeah, Earth's Mightiest Heroes, that team of like Thor and Iron Man and Captain America and all those guys, yeah, I know them, a bunch of heroes coming together to face single threats that no one hero could face all on their own. Yeah, that has not been the Avengers in a long time. Because you see, several years back, the Avengers, they kind of split apart, and ever since they came back together, they didn't quite come back together as a single thing. The Avengers have been multiple teams at Marvel for several years, and currently, in the Marvel Universe, we have 3 Avengers teams. We've got the main Avengers team, and that series is being written by Mark Waid, and that book, it's kind of the classic Earth's Mightiest Heroes all coming together to face single threats, you know, the thing that I just said a couple minutes ago. Then there is Uncanny Avengers. Now, that is meant to be the Avengers Unity Task Force, and that is made up of regular superheroes, mutants, and Inhumans, and they're all coming together to face threats to each of those groups. It's kind of meant to be a symbolic gesture of unity, of hey, all these different types of heroes can come together and be a force for good. And that book for many years was being written by Jerry Dugan, but right before this event began, he stepped down and Jim Zub came in and he took over that series, so he's the one who helped out with Avengers No Surrender. And the other Avengers book is USA Avengers, which is the weirdest concept out of any of these. Yeah, those other concepts, yeah, they're kind of easy to understand. This one, it was a team founded by Sunspot, who bought AIM, the Advanced Ideas Mechanics. Yes, you know those guys in the crazy yellow beekeeper outfits. They're super scientists who commit crime so that they can fund their super science. Yeah, they've kind of been like one of the jokey villain teams at Marvel for many years. But Sunspot bought AIM and decided he was going to take all those scientists and all those ideas and use it as a force for good. But people still kind of had a problem with them because they were AIM. So he decided to rebrand AIM as the most patriotic Avengers team out there and turn them into the USA Avengers. I think that's how it's supposed to be pronounced. I still to this day don't know if it's US Avengers, USA Avengers, US Avengers, I don't know. I'm just going to call it every single one of those every single time that I talk about it. And that book was written by Al Ewing, who is always known for 2 things, his sense of humor and also his crazy science fiction and fantasy ideas, both of which he got to experiment with plenty while he was writing his separate Avengers books. But basically, I wanted you guys to know there have been 3 main Avengers teams over the past couple years, and there were several other ones in the years before that. Yeah, ever since Brian Michael Bendis broke up the original Avengers team, the Avengers have not really been the Avengers. The Avengers have been whoever wants to start an Avengers team can start their own Avengers team. Yeah, and as a long-time Avengers fan, I've kind of had a problem with that. I've had a problem with the idea of the Avengers no longer being an official group, more of just whenever a bunch of superheroes get together, they can become the Avengers, because that's not really the Avengers. That's kind of like saying, hey, if me and a bunch of other baseball players get together, we can call ourselves the Yankees. No, I think the official Yankees team will kind of have a problem with that. So yeah, that's one problem that I've had with the Avengers over the past couple years. But also, I've kind of had a problem that the Avengers, just in their tone, have not really been what I think of when I think of the Avengers. Listen, I'm not coming in here and saying, oh, the Avengers books have not been good for a decade. No, there have been some great Avengers books over the past decade. But they just haven't been things that I think of when I think of the Avengers. Like, take a look at Jonathan Hickman's run on the Avengers. I was talking about No Surrender on Twitter, and so many people said, oh, clearly you hate the Jonathan Hickman run on the Avengers. I do not. The Jonathan Hickman run on the Avengers, okay, granted, the first couple issues of that, by which I mean probably the first 2 trades of it, a kind of a jumbled mixed bag. I would almost even call it a mess, but when it got to, like, say, trade number 3, when it got to the Infinity storyline, everything finally started to come together. It was like, oh, I'm starting to see this now. But even when it got really good, when it got amazing towards the end of that, and it became one of the best storylines that I have read at Marvel in years, still wasn't what I would call an Avengers book. The best way I can describe it is that, to me, the Avengers are a hamburger, and Jonathan Hickman's run on the Avengers was a taco. It's a great taco. It's an amazing taco, but just because it's got ground beef, lettuce, and cheese wrapped between 2 layers doesn't make it a burger. It's got similar ingredients in there, but the overall taste is not the same. Again, I want to stress this for everybody who is going to give me crap on Twitter for the next week. I like the Jonathan Hickman Avengers run. It just does not feel what I like an Avengers book to feel like. It would kind of be like if, you know how the Fantastic Four is coming back, and there's all those Fantastic Four fans out there who's like, oh, I've been waiting for them to come back. Yeah, imagine if when they came back, it wasn't Dan Slott writing it, but was, I don't know, Ed Brubaker coming on, and when he came on to the book, he decided to turn them into a spy espionage team going on Black Ops missions, and it was an amazing book, and everybody was applying it, and you came out here and was like, yeah, okay, it's a really good book, but it's not the Fantastic Four. And then I, or some jackass on the internet, came in here and just said, well, you know, when the Fantastic Four were founded, they actually were going up against the Soviets during the Cold War, and they were kind of going on a secret mission in their very first mission that did have to do a lot with the spy aspect of the Cold War. So when you think about it, this spy espionage Black Ops version of the Fantastic Four is really getting back to their roots. You would hate me for that and call me an asshole. That's kind of what I've been dealing with for the past week on Twitter ever since I came in here and talked about Avengers No Surrender, and people thought that I hated the Jonathan Hickman run on the Avengers. I like it. Let's get that out there. It's just not what I like an Avengers book to feel like. Are we all cool now? By the way, I know anybody out there who doesn't follow me on Twitter thinks I'm acting like a paranoid freak up here, but trust me, man, this has been building and building with every single tweet I've gotten over the past week. So, okay, going into Avengers No Surrender, when I heard about this book, first off, it was right after Secret Empire, which I think was the final straw that broke the camel's back for many people when it came to events. And even though this is technically a storyline and not an event, the difference being that it's one thing in one series with no tie-ins, and it's all going from point A to point B, rather than going all over the place with tons of crazy tie-ins and affecting every single other book out there. So it was a storyline, not an event. Yeah, man, it was still being advertised kind of like an event, so I already kind of had a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth. Plus, as I said, I just have not been a fan of what the Avengers books have become over the past several years. They just haven't really felt like Avengers books to me. And even when they tried to feel like an Avengers book, like Mark Waid's Avengers series, man, I wanted that book to be good. I wanted it to be good for so long. It was just kind of boring. It wasn't very interesting. And the art style in that book, they got amazing artists on that book, but never ones that really matched the tone of what that book was going for. So it just kind of felt like an uneven series at all time. And then you had USA Avengers out there, which, yeah, man, it's an interesting book. It is an interesting, fun book, but it's like a spy G.I. Joe series, and it's like, that's not the Avengers. It's not. Stop using the name Avengers for things that are not the Avengers. It's been a problem that I've had for a while. So you're going to have this thing that looked like an event with all these Avengers teams I wasn't really that big of a fan of, all coming together. It was going to be 16 parts long, and you're going to have 3 different writers working on this thing. It sounded to me like this was going to be a jumbled mess. I love this series. This is hands down my favorite Avengers storyline that I have read since the Kurt Busiek stuff about 15 years ago. I'm going way back on this one. And this thing wrapped up last week. I've been sitting on this for a week going, do I still feel that way? Was it just kind of the hype? Was it just kind of like all those emotions building up and then all came to a climax and now that's settled down? Do I still feel that way? Yeah, I still feel that way. Now, I'm not going to come in here and sum up for you every single thing that happens in this storyline, partly because I want you guys to read it because it's really darn good, but also because it's 16 parts long. There is no way I'm going to sum up for you 16 freaking issues. However, that is something I have to applaud this book for right here. It is 16 parts long, and I never got bored with it. Every single week when that issue came out, I was ready to move on to the next part of it. I was enjoying that, I was cruising along, and I didn't have to wait that long for the next one because it was a weekly series. I will talk more at the end of this video about why that whole weekly series format actually does really work for this book. But yeah, this book had amazing pacing to it, and that is something that screws over so many series out there. So many books out there have great ideas, have really good writing, but the pacing is kind of wonky. This one, every single issue was spaced out perfectly in how it moved from one thing into the next. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that every single issue focused on a different member of the Avengers. Every single issue was being told from the point of view of a different member of the team, and that helped you really get into each of their heads. That has been another problem of mine with the Avengers, and also, not to hit this hornet's nest again, but it was also kind of a problem I had with the Jonathan Hickman run on that book. Jonathan Hickman turned them kind of into the Justice League Unlimited, in which it was like, we're going to get as many superheroes as we can together and kind of turn them into a task force that goes out there. It's like, that's, you know, a cool idea, but the Avengers, it wasn't the Justice League to me. The Avengers were a more personal team. It was a team where you got the feeling of how everyone existed on this team, what everyone's emotions were on this team, how everyone related to everyone on this team. And we got little bits of that here and there in the Hickman run, but mostly it was more of, hey, look at all these heroes going out there to save the day. And it's like, it's not, you're kind of missing that personal touch with me. Here, the fact that every single issue is being told from the point of view of a different member of the team is like, oh man, easy way to establish a personal connection with each of them. It was able to take characters who I didn't even really care about all that much and make me care about them. There is one issue in here that focuses on Red Wolf, who I actually did really like in the Jerry Dugan Secret Wars miniseries that he first appeared in. But when he came back in his own ongoing series, and then in Occupy Avengers, yeah man, I just didn't care for him anymore. I just didn't really get that personal connection with him anymore. This one issue with him was great. And the concept behind this takes an old premise and is able to make it feel new. Basically what the idea behind this is that the Grandmaster, one of the elders of the universe, this guy who he's popped up every now and again, but he's never been a huge character, but his whole idea is that he is this ancient being of nearly unlimited power, but he's obsessed with games. He is willing to bet everything on a game. That has always been his thing. In fact, he was the one who first created the Contest of Champions, which a lot of people have compared this to Contest of Champions, but I actually think it's very different in many ways. Yes, it is still the Grandmaster picking teams to go on this big mission, competing against another person with their own team. But I mean, again, that's kind of just what the Grandmaster does. To say that this is like Contest of Champions is like saying, hey, did Bane show up again and is trying to dismantle every aspect of Batman's life? Oh, well then it's just Nightfall all over again. No, it's not. It's completely different. No, it's Bane. It's popping up. He's dismantling Batman. That's the thing that Bane does. So every story is Nightfall now. Like, no man, this is just the thing that Grandmaster does. That's his thing. But even beyond that, even beyond the fact that, hey, this is just what the Grandmaster does, this still to me is very different from the original Contest of Champions. Because the original Contest of Champions, yes, it was the Grandmaster picking a team to go up against another person picking a team, but the Avengers were part of each of their teams. So were several other heroes from all around the world. This is not that. The Grandmaster creates his own team, mostly made up of brand new characters from the far reaches of space, and then the other person he's going up against, he picks the Black Order, Thanos' old crew of flunkies. Which, man, Marvel, I keep bringing this up every single time that I talk about the Black Order, but especially now, after Infinity War, wouldn't it be a good idea to create a series of one-shots that each focus on members of the Black Order, giving us their origin stories? I think a lot of us would kind of dig seeing that. Sorry, I just have to bring that up every time I talk about the Black Order. But it's the two of them going up against each other. Each of them have to grab these little pyramid-shaped objects, each of which control an element, which they get really creative with those later on. But this is the thing that makes it different. A, the Avengers are not part of their team. Instead, they remove the Earth from its universe. They completely isolate it inside this big black void, and the Avengers, half of them are frozen in time, the other half of them are there to be obstacles. They are not part of the game as in people who can possibly win for the Grandmaster or win for his opponents. They are there to just be obstacles on that level. Which I actually found that to be a really fun twist on this. That the other thing that makes this different is what the Grandmaster is trying to achieve with this. They reveal the Grandmaster, the guy who we have known for decades now, was not the original Grandmaster. You see, every single member of the Elders of the Universe have a name that identifies them based on what their obsession is. And the Grandmaster was not the original Grandmaster. He was originally known as the Challenger, because there was another Grandmaster before him. And the Challenger kept challenging the Grandmaster over and over and over and over again until finally he was able to win. And the thing he won was the title of Grandmaster. And when he won that, he banished the old Grandmaster out of the universe. He said, you have to now be banished from our universe until that universe ends. Remember how I kept talking about the Jonathan Hickman run on the Avengers? How did that end? With the universe being destroyed and then reborn again. Meaning that the old Grandmaster, now the Challenger, found a loophole and he was able to come back into our universe, and he is now playing a game again with the Grandmaster to get his title back. Okay, something that I have to talk about right now. So many people complain when Marvel or DC try to make their comics more like the movies, to try and appeal more to that movie crowd. And how is the Grandmaster portrayed in the Thor Ragnarok movie? Nothing at all like he is in the comics. This would have been so easy for them to come in here and go, okay, it's our time to introduce a new Grandmaster who's more like that one from the movies, and now he's gonna win and he's gonna become the new Grandmaster, and that's gonna be our guy from now on. No, the guy they introduced, nothing like Jeff Goldblum Grandmaster. He is nothing like that character. He is a completely new creation, and yeah, he is kind of just a really big space monster, but man, when you find out how he was screwed over, how he was kind of forced into being banished from the universe, how he lost everything to this guy, and how mad he is about that, man, you kind of get on his side in this. Don't get me wrong, he is still totally a villain, but that's the thing that makes this so interesting. You get to see his backstory. You get to see his origin, and he was actually kind of like a friendly Grandmaster. He's like, hey man, yeah, I like to play games, but it's all in good fun. You know, it's all just part of a game, man. Nothing to be so serious about. And then the new Grandmaster ends up defeating him, booting him from the universe. He has spent billions and billions of years just trapped outside of time and space. Man, when he comes back and he is now just enraged and he is willing to do everything it takes to win, holy cow, you get that rage coming off of him. But this is the best part of this new Challenger to me. It's not just he got screwed over and used to be a nice guy and now you understand why he is just so angry. Is that after he lost his spot in the universe for billions of years, after he spent billions of years in stasis outside of space and time, after he even lost his name, he can't even call himself Grandmaster anymore. The thing he originally was, when he comes back, he's still willing to play a game. You know he could just rip the old Grandmaster in half, but he's like, nope, these are the rules. I'm going to obey the rules. It shows, even after everything he had taken away from him, he still gets how the game is played. Literally, he's still like, all right, I'm willing to obey the rules because I have some freaking honor to me. That's the great thing about this. He actually has honor to him. He's not just big, I will destroy everything. It's like he has a code. The easiest way to make an audience kind of relate to and understand a villain is give them a code. And they gave this guy a code. That's why so many people love, like, say, mobster films. Yeah, mobsters are despicable, horrible criminals, but they have a code. They don't do this thing, they don't do that thing. This is the code we live by. It's like, all right, they've got dignity to them. They've got something to them that makes them respectable in some way, shape, or form. I mean, that's one of the reasons why people love the Rogues over in The Flash. This is kind of that, taken to a massive cosmic scale. But when he gets back, he's still got that code of honor. He's still going to follow through with it no matter how mad he is. The new Grandmaster still cheats in this game. He freaking cheats in the game, and it just makes you look at this new Grandmaster and at the old Grandmaster and go, oh dude, there is, again, both of you are trying to destroy the Earth, but I still have a clear favorite in this. You're both villains. The old Grandmaster is just an asshole. You at least have some dignity to you. I mean, the scene in here in which the Challenger learns that the Grandmaster is cheating is freaking cheating at the one thing he, the original Grandmaster, the guy who earned that title in the first place, always held above everything. The thing he treated with the most dignity, he is cheating at that thing. You can feel his righteous anger coming from that moment. But how is he cheating in this game? Well, at the end of the very first issue, when the Earth has suddenly disappeared from its orbit and it can't contact any of its friends in space, and half of all the heroes on the planet have all been frozen in time, they all just look like statues, and no one has any idea what's going on, and the surviving Avengers have to come together to save the day, suddenly this character called Voyager pops up. And Voyager claimed to be one of the first Avengers, and everybody remembers her. Everybody's like, yeah, you were there when the Avengers were founded, you were there when the Vision joined the team, you were there when Cap's Kooky Quartet came around, you were the only one of the founding Avengers to stick around during that, and you vouched for all of them. Oh man, you have been the heart of this team, but you disappeared years ago. We're so glad that you're finally back. And I, as an old school Avengers fan, was like, yeah, none of that stuff happened. I don't even need to say as an old school Avengers fan. Literally anybody who's ever even seen the cover of Avengers #1 knows that wasn't a thing that happened. So I was sitting there like, alright, what's going on with this? Because there have been stuff like this in comics before. There have been things like the Sentry, like characters who, yes, I existed for years and I did all these great things for you, but I made the world forget about me. We've done that stuff before, and it's actually been done well before. But that's the thing. You know how I brought the Sentry? Yeah, this was kind of like exactly the Sentry all over again. And I didn't really want to look at this and just go like, yeah, man, we kind of already have a thing just like this. And the Sentry doesn't like change continuity any. Like, if you forget, like the Marvel Universe did, all the great things that the Sentry does, it doesn't really mess with any character's history all that much. But with this, you're coming in here and you're saying, okay, she helped found the team, she did this, she did this, she did this. Does that mean that from now on, whenever we talk about the Avengers, we're going to like have to make sure that we include her in all those pictures? Because it's gonna feel weird if like from now on, whenever you see that statue outside of Avengers Mansion of the founding members, you're going to now see her up there as like, yeah, that's a character who's existed for half a year. Okay, great, alright. But, and I said I wasn't going to sum up the entire storyline because I want you guys to read it, but I will talk about some key plot points in here because it does play into what I like about this book so much. Halfway through this storyline, Jarvis, who has been sick throughout this entire event, which that was a great way of getting all of us old school Avengers fans to go, no, I'm invested in this! Because, yeah man, us old school Avengers fans, we love Jarvis. Jarvis, in many ways, has always been the heart of the team. We have fond memories of Jarvis, just like the rest of the Avengers do. And I feel like so many other writers on the Avengers, like Bendis and, yes, Hickman, they all have ignored this guy. They've all been like, oh yeah, didn't they have a butler? Maybe I'll make a joke about that in passing, but we'll never do anything. It's like, all of us old school Avengers fans just like, that's kind of like just randomly making a joke about Alfred in a Batman book and forgetting he exists. He's kind of a big part of this team. The fact that he is sick in this from some mystery disease, and the rest of the Avengers, while the majority of the team are trying to save the world and get these two teams to stop fighting each other and try to figure out what the mystery of these pyramids are that are destroying all of the world. While they're doing that, the Beast and the New Wasp are trying to find a way to save Jarvis. And they're able to go in there, they're able to cure him, but when Jarvis wakes up, he goes, yeah, who's that? She's not a member of the team. And then as soon as he says that, it's like a series of dominoes in everyone's mind, like it was an illusion. And as soon as someone was able to break the illusion, everybody else was like, wait a sec, yeah, it's all fading away. Who is this person? It's the Grandmaster's daughter, not old Grandmaster, new Challenger, old Challenger, new Grandmaster. It is, that's gonna get real confusing. So it is his daughter, and basically he sent her to the Earth to cheat. He sent her specifically to mobilize the Avengers and get them to go to the right places to basically stop the Black Order from being able to get the pyramids so that his team could win. So the Voyager is trying to get these pyramids herself. She's trying to keep the Black Order from getting the pyramids. She's trying to help the Avengers interfere with this game. But the Grandmaster basically just keeps treating her as a pawn, because to him, that's all that she is. That's all he cares about. But she watches as the Avengers come together for each other, as they care about each other, as they work together, as they are there to support each other, and as even though they have learned that she isn't real, they still want to kind of help her. She's like, oh my god, I get it now. I get why the Avengers are special. And that hit a big chord with me because, as I've been saying, that's the thing that always made the Avengers special. It's that they cared about each other. It's that they each had relationships with each other. It's that they were, in the words of Groot, family. I know someone's gonna say, Groot doesn't say family. It's like, it's a joke that goes through like 9 different other things to get there. It's a Vin Diesel joke. But yeah, they're family. That's the point of them. So the fact that the Avengers being a family was a key plot element to this entire storyline. It was like, oh my god, someone gets it again. That was the point of this team in the first place. And them being a family is the thing that gets her to kind of turn around and go, I should be on their team. So she comes forward, she admits the truth, and they're like, oh man, that really sucks about your dad. Well, I'm glad you're on our team. It's like, I love that. I love that they were just like, listen, we believe this. We're not going to go through that whole thing that every single other book out there were doing, which is like, oh, I still don't know if we can trust you. It's like, no, we can tell. We understand that your voice, and also, hey man, you're not the only person here with really messed up parent issues. So yeah, we understand it. You're on our team now, so prove it to us. Prove that you are on our side by helping us stop your father. That was great. I love seeing that. But this all leads into the big final fight at the end of this, in which you have the challenger figuring out that he's been cheated, that the Grandmaster was lying this entire time, that he was cheating at this thing that he held high above everything else, and he just decides, you know what, screw it. If you're going to cheat at this, even after everything I've been through, and after I still tried to follow the rules, I'm just gonna flip the table. And he goes down to Earth and just goes, yeah, screw it, I'm just going to wipe everything out. So it's all the Avengers having to fight against the Challenger, fight against one of the most powerful beings in the universe. And this leads into one of the most Avengers-y fights I've seen in years. Again, another thing that I have been missing from the Avengers books, it just hasn't been that feeling of family, that personal touch. It's also just been the feeling of teamwork. Because yes, in the Avengers books that we have seen from other writers, you see them all punching in the same direction, but you don't really get team up stuff that much. You don't really get that feeling of, hey, these are characters all working together. You will get some stuff here and there, but in this one fight, everything that happens are characters working together. You've got both of the Wasps shooting this guy in both of his eyes at the same time. You've got the Falcon using his psychic powers to link into this guy's brain, so that way Synapse can then piggyback through his brain into his brain, giving her the ability to access the pain centers of his mind. It's like, oh my goodness, you're doing a psychic combo attack on him in here. You've got the Wasp showing that she has miniature arrows that she brought along, her own invention, and she enlarges them to regular size and hands them off to Hawkeye. It's like, dear God, this is Avengers stuff that's happening in this issue. Sorry if I'm getting too excited, I'm jumbling all my words in here, but I've kind of been waiting for a fight like this in Avengers book for a long freaking time now. And that is something that I've been missing. Jeez, I didn't even talk about how Quicksilver was able to save the day and return everybody back to normal by using the powers of Synapse and Scarlet Witch combined with him. But yeah, it is the characters all working together, having all their powers basically do combo attacks with each other. That's how the Avengers operate. You know, when you look over at, say, the Justice League, yes, it is their most powerful characters. But you look over at, you know, the Avengers, you know, you might look at characters like the Wasp, or Ant-Man, or Falcon, or Synapse, and think, how on earth are they, like, on your Earth's Mightiest Heroes team? It's because they each do unique things that when you can work together, actually work. And that's what this final fight actually proved. This final fight was nothing but, here's how everybody works together on a team. Here is why Hawkeye is important on this team. Here's why Synapse is important on this team. Here's why Squirrel Girl is important on this team. By the way, I gotta point that out real quick. Another thing that I love about this issue is that whenever they wrote characters who have their own series, like Falcon or Squirrel Girl, they actually felt like the characters in those books. Because there's a great moment in here in which Squirrel Girl, for anybody who reads her book, she basically always wins through the power of positive thinking. She always wins by the power of, hey man, let's try it, because that could actually work. Let's all be positive about this. There was a moment of hopelessness in which Synapse and Falcon cannot figure out a way to stop this guy, and Squirrel Girl's like, well, why don't you just try this? And it's like, well, that probably wouldn't work. Well, you don't know if you don't try it, and then they try it and it actually works. And I was like, that's exactly what would happen in Squirrel Girl book. Alright, way to go! Wait, that's how you use Squirrel Girl on this team. But yes, as I said, that final fight, it works so incredibly well. That is how the Avengers are supposed to fight. Again, not to hit this hornet's nest for the third time. I have been stung so many times on this episode and I don't want to read the comments. But I did like the Jonathan Hickman run on the Avengers. But the reason why it just doesn't feel like an Avengers book to me is because when I read the Jonathan Hickman run on the Avengers, this is what I heard the entire time. And there's nothing wrong with that. That is exactly the type of music I should be hearing when I read the Jonathan Hickman run on the Avengers, because that run was all about what are you willing to sacrifice to save everything? How far are you willing to go into darkness, and can you still call yourself a hero? Are you willing to even trust your friend after they have betrayed you and you've seen the horrible things that they've done? And who's the real villain? And how far down do the depths of the human soul really go? You want to get into all that? That book is amazing. He handles it perfectly, and this is exactly what you should hear when you read something like that. But again, just speaking as an old school Avengers fan, it's like, okay, that's fine every now and again, but this is what I'm hearing the entire time I'm reading this book. And this is all coming after Bendis spent almost a decade on this book, writing stuff that at its best was all over the place and at its worst was just flat out bad. Yeah, man, it just feels like the Avengers are never going to be that thing that I like again. It's never going to be that thing that spoke to me. It's never going to be that team that I always loved. And then, as I read this final fight, this is what I heard. I know I'm getting a copyright claim on this video, but I don't care. It was worth it for that clip. In fact, that's kind of what I heard all throughout this series, because it's not just the big final fight there at the end in which everyone is coming together. It's this entire series. You see all these characters interacting, all these characters working with each other, even characters who weren't on the same Avengers team. You've got characters from the Uncanny Avengers and characters who are on the regular Avengers or on the USA Avengers who are now working together. And holy cow, they are nailing their interactions. There is one moment in which the Beast and the new Wasp are trying to save Jarvis, and what goes on in that issue is fantastic. Listen, I like the new Wasp, but I was still always waiting for that moment in which I went, alright, let's get your big Avengers moment in here. Like, you're fun, you're quirky, I really enjoyed your own little series that you had there for a bit, but let's see that moment that makes me go, this is why you're an Avenger. And holy cow, they did it. They did it in that one issue. And you have the Beast in there interacting with her in the best little interactions you could get between two super scientists. I absolutely loved it. I felt that way throughout this entire series, and I just kept waiting. I kept waiting the entire time. All right, when are you going to drop the ball? When is this going to dip in quality? When is this going to just get too big? Because this is 16 issues long with 3 writers on it. You know it ain't going to work the entire way through. It worked the entire way through. And part of the reason for that is that, listen, this was written by 3 people. It was written by Al Ewing, Mark Waid, and Jim Zub. But Al Ewing and Mark Waid kind of just gave like plot elements. They gave story beats. They're like, this is gonna happen, this is gonna happen, this is gonna happen. They still had Jim Zub basically write the entire thing. Jim Zub is one of the most worksman-like writers out there. I don't know if that's the correct term for it, but that's the guy who he shows up to work. That's the guy that's like, we need someone to put on this book right now. Jim Zub, he might not do a series that knocks it out of the park and that you'll remember forever, although this is an example of him doing that, but he will show up and go, I can do that. And he will do that. Jim Zub is an expert at showing up and saying, I can do this. He is the guy who you get in there when you need someone to write something. That is the vaguest way that I could give him a compliment, but you guys know what I'm talking about. Yeah, and basically he took everything that Mark Waid and Al Ewing came up with, and his own ideas as well. I'm not trying to say like he just wrote out what they said. He took all three of their ideas and he was able to actually like plot it all out incredibly well. And again, I'm sure that Mark Waid and Al Ewing actually did like add their own little bits in here as well, aside from just story beats. They probably wrote parts themselves. But from what I have heard from some people who work at Marvel, Jim Zub was the main guy writing all this. So that's why it has a unified feeling to it. You did have one guy writing it, and it was the guy whose expertise is, listen, whatever book you put me on, I can do that. Whatever book you put me on, I know what the story is, and I can try my best to match that tone. And he did that here. But also, the art in this nails it. The art knocks it out of the freaking park. Because, yes, they have had big artists on the Avengers books over the past couple years, but they've tried to get, like, really artsy with them. They've tried to get really, like, highfalutin and indie with them. And don't get me wrong, I love me some highfalutin indie art. But you need to understand, some artists match a certain tone on a book. Why could I not say match? Match a certain tone on a book, and some artists don't match the certain tone of a book. And if you put the wrong artist on the wrong tone for the wrong book, it's not going to feel that well. A good example of that is that they had Mike Del Mundo on the Avengers for a while. Mike Del Mundo is one of the best artists in the industry. That dude does jaw-dropping artwork. But his art is not really the kind of stuff I think of when I think of Avengers Assemble. It's not the kind of stuff I think of when I think of, hey, let's go out there and fight bad guys, everybody. Like, no, he does really trippy, imaginative stuff. And, you know, every now and again that would work. Like, he did a storyline focusing on Kang the Conqueror and talking about how he interprets time and his different timelines that he's lived in and what it's like for him to live at the end of time. How many more times can I say time? And for that one issue, it did work. But then in the very next issue, they went into, hey, the Avengers are teaming up to stop Kang. And yeah, it just didn't, it didn't match that tone anymore. Here, every single artist they had working on this book nailed it. Did exactly what they should have done on this series. They got artists on this book who knew how to draw superheroes punching big supervillains. That's the art you need on an Avengers book. And there is a big congratulations I have to give to this book, because this series sold. This series sold incredibly well. Almost every single issue of this sold out and had to go to a second print. And a lot of times, you'll hear that a Marvel book has gone to a second print, but it's because, like, some store out in Missouri that didn't order any copies of it, someone came into their store and said, hey, can I get a copy of that? I was like, oh, I guess I'll order a copy of it now. Oh, they're out of it? Well, they'll go to second print. That's kind of what happens a lot of times when Marvel books go to second print. These books actually sold out. My store had to almost double the number of issues we were ordering about halfway through the series, because every single copy of it that we were buying was selling the fudge out. If I was not working on that Wednesday at my store, I had to go to my store anyways to get a copy, because I knew when I came in for my next shift, it was not going to be there. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened with many of the first issues of this. I do own a couple of second prints of these issues because I just had to wait on those, because that's how quickly this thing was selling out. We sold out of second printings. That almost never happens at my store. And it was selling out incredibly well, and it was because, A, this felt like an Avengers book. People who wanted to read Avengers, they no longer had to read, well, you know, it's a bunch of heroes teaming up, but here's the twist on it. Well, then you put a twist on it, it's not really the Avengers anymore. It's a whole different team. Just call it a different team. This, it was the Avengers. And people who wanted to read the Avengers got the Avengers. And it looked like an Avengers book. I would love to come in here and say the writing is all that matters on a book, but man, that ain't it. You need to get an artist who actually matches the tone of a book. I wish that we lived in a world where, hey, as long as the story was good, that's all that matters. But no, the art is incredibly important to a book. You've got artists on these books who felt like artists for Avengers books. That is something that helped with it a lot. But the other reason why this worked so insanely well is it was a weekly series. I have been talking about this forever. So many people out there are always contacting me saying that I'm wrong about this, that the format that comics have had since the dawn of time is perfect and is going to stay that way forever. It's not, man. I'm sorry, but we now live in a day and age in which between movies, television, video games, and the infinite landscape of entertainment that is the internet, people don't really want stuff that if you read it for 10 to 15 minutes, you then have to wait a month on the next chapter of it. I mean, heck man, just look at YouTube, look at Twitch, look at so many other forms of entertainment these days. It's stuff where the content creators are coming up with stuff daily, sometimes multiple times a day. Yeah man, we are now accustomed to, I want this thing, give me this thing. The idea of having to wait a month for the next chapter of a book, it doesn't really work anymore. And if you want to get people excited, you want to create something that will get people going, oh my goodness, I can't wait for the next part of that, the sooner you can get it to them, the easier it is to keep that level of excitement up. That is why so many new comic book fans don't read single issues. They just read trades. Because, hey man, a trade is a meal. You can sit down, eat that meal, and then you can wait for a bit. You can wait until the next trade comes out. The idea of, hey man, I gotta wait 4 more weeks to get the second part of the storyline, and then it's still not done. I have to wait another 4 weeks to get the third part of the storyline, and then it's still not done. I gotta wait 4 more weeks for the next part of that storyline, and who knows if it'll even be done then. Yeah man, a lot of new readers, younger readers out there who are more accustomed to entertainment that keeps coming out quickly, they're not into that. That's why they tend to go with trades more. But this, putting out an Avengers series weekly, that's exactly how it should be done. And I understand how hard that is to pull off. I'm not saying like, yes, and any book that doesn't do this is wrong. Now, I get it, man. It's really hard to pull this off. I'm amazed that they were able to do it. But yeah, that's one of the reasons why this book worked so well. So how quickly this book came out, but also the fact that it just felt like an Avengers book and it looked like an Avengers book, those are some of the other reasons it sold so incredibly well. And this is something else that I just have to bring up. And I never like to talk about this stuff on this site, but there's so many people out there who they keep pointing at like recent Marvel books and recent Marvel books not selling and saying things like, oh, well, you know, it's the social justice warrior stuff that's making it not sell. It's all these female characters, it's all these people of color, it's all these gay and lesbian characters on these teams. That's why it's not selling. Just give us the old stuff in here. We don't need any of these new characters in here. And I know someone is going to come in here and comment like, well, that's not what they're really saying. Some people are saying that. And those are the people I'm talking about right now. There are many people out there who are saying that. And yeah, I look at this book, and this was an Avengers book where there were tons of female characters, tons of people of color in there. And there were 3 major LGBTQ characters. In fact, you could even argue that the main character of this whole series was Lightning, who was a gay Latino character, because he's the one who opened the series, and he's the one who closed the series. And again, I don't want to spoil it, but the way that he closed the series, it brought it all back to the beginning of the series, and it was so badass. It was so great. And also, I always kind of liked Lightning. He was on the West Coast Avengers a long-ass time ago, and I always thought, man, this guy turned into Lightning. Shouldn't he really be around some more? So I'm glad that they brought him back for this. Although I really wish they had updated his outfit. I mean, God, he's got one of the tackiest outfits out there. Ugh. It kind of seemed like if you were going to do anything to change his character, just changing him from Living Lightning to Lightning should have been the only thing. Should have given him a costume update. But yeah, so you have so many female characters, so many people of color, so many LGBTQ characters in here, and this book sold incredibly well, was critically well received, the fans really enjoyed it. Yeah, man, the stuff that people keep arguing about why Marvel isn't selling because, oh, they're including all these types of characters in here now, it's bullcrap. That is not it. This book sold well because it was an Avengers book that felt like an Avengers book. And so many Marvel books over the past couple decades, not past couple decades, past couple years, yeah, you pick up an Avengers book and it's like, all right, that's, you know, it's kind of quirky and interesting, but it doesn't feel like an Avengers book. It's, when I pick up an Avengers book, this isn't really what I wanted to read in here. I mean, it's nice, it's fun, you know, that's, yay, it's not really it. The Avengers, they don't really go up against big threats, or it's just really depressing. So many Marvel books out there are just insanely depressing because the heroes are just fighting each other, or they're just having their lives ripped apart. Here, Earth's mightiest heroes, all teaming up to face a threat that not one of them could face on their own. Yeah, man, it doesn't matter who's on the Avengers. It doesn't matter who these characters are. That, I think this book really kind of proves this was not what Marvel sales were suffering from. Because this book sold insanely well, and it went against everything that so many other people have been criticizing Marvel for. These characters can work. You just have to write Avengers like Avengers, And this book was an Avengers book for the first time in a long ass time. So that is it. That is our first episode today on the Avengers. Come back later today in which we are going to be talking about the brand new Avengers #1 by Jason Aaron. It will be a much shorter episode than this one here. But if you guys enjoyed my talk about the Avengers and you kept hearing me talk about the Kurt Busiek run on the Avengers and you're like, oh geez, what's this thing that you keep mentioning? It came out way long ago. I'm going to put an Amazon link in the description down below of where you can buy digitally their very first trade from the Kurt Busiek, George Perez run. It was one of my favorite runs on the Avengers, so if you've never checked it out, you can check out that first trade in the Amazon link below. Or if you don't want to check that out, but you still want to support the channel, you can just go through that Amazon link and then buy anything else on Amazon. As long as you start by going through that link, we will get a cut of the profits. It's a great way to treat yourself and help this channel at the same time. But if you can't do that and you still want to help the channel, hey man, doesn't cost anything to share this around the web. Doesn't cost anything to tell your friends about the channel. Doesn't cost anything to follow me on Twitter or Twitch or Tumblr at Professor Thorgy. Those are all ways that you can help support this channel. Thank you guys very much for tuning in. Come back later today for another Avengers episode. Bye.